Thank you for tuning in to MacroView Television, and welcome to a brand new edition of Taiwan Outlook, the program that presents the different faces and let you hear their stories on Taiwan. I'm your host, Rui Guo. The Taiping Island in the South China Sea has been a sovereign territory of the Republic of China since 1947. It has resurfaced recently in the news because of President Ma Ying-jeou's visit to Taiping Island on January 28th. And we're going to find out more about the whole controversy surrounding South China Sea today on the program, because we are delighted to have as our special guest Dr. Alexander Huang,黄介正, who is currently an assistant professor of the Graduate Institute of International Affairs and Strategic Studies at Tamkang University, to talk about the background and analyses of the controversy. Welcome to our program, Alex.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the program, yes. Alex. And I know a lot of people in Taiwan, around the globe actually, are concerned about the situation in the South China Sea. And since, Alex, you're an expert on the issue, can you give us a brief background about the whole controversy surrounding territory, sovereignty claim, and also what is Taiwan's position on this issue? Please.
Yeah, the South China Sea issue has been on and off in the past 20 years. Right. But the very origin was because of the victory of in the World War II. Yes. By the end of World War II, as the winning victorious ally, the Republic of China was blessed and agreed upon by other allied power, which were the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom, that we should take over the occupied islands and waters that being held by Japan. So Japan literally surrendered to Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek and surrendered all the occupied land and islands to the Republic of China. And that's why after the war, in 1946 and 47, the Republic of China Navy sent several flotillas to cruise the South China Sea and name the major islands of the South China Sea and draw the 11- U-shaped line of the South China Sea. And it was not disputed during that time because the Republic of China was one of the victorious ally member. Unfortunately, by 1947, the People's Republic of China was established and claimed that they would take over the dashed line or U-shaped line, the South China Sea. So both the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China on Taiwan claimed the same area of the almost entire South China Sea. It was not disputed because PRC had no military capability to take care of it. So in short, the Republic of China on Taiwan, we were there for over 60 years, undisputed, until the recent 20 years.
But this is really being a very, somewhat of a hot potato in recent years, especially as you mentioned, the PRC today is now exercising, claims and controls over some of the small islands, even through landfill. And this is, of course, stirs some controversy, especially with people, governments like the United States, the Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, and also Brunei in the region. And given the fact that we have recently witnessed there's been a suit brought by the Philippines to the International Court, which claims that the Taiping Island is not an island. It's just a rock. So it's not entitled to the 200 nautical miles of exclusive economic zone that's protected under the UN Convention governing the law of the sea. So given the fact that this is adding fuel to the controversy, what is your take about the decision of the International Court, and what will be the likely impact on this controversy that is still brewing?
Well, for Taiwan, this is a pretty awkward situation because we were not the party of the lawsuit.
No.
It was raised by the Republic of the Philippines against the People's Republic of China over the waters and islands that we claim and we held for over 60 years. And I think we all know, and the audience understood, that we have a very difficult diplomatic situation.
Yes.
So the conclusion, short conclusion, is that no matter what decision is made by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, we will be impacted upon. So we were not in the lawsuit process. We were not granted the status to join the session, but we will be affected by the decision.
Okay.
Now, the government of the Philippines raised 15 different items and asked the Permanent Court of Arbitration to make decision. The People's Republic of China in Beijing claim that the Philippines has no right to raise even the case. Because according to the regional agreement and the bilateral agreement between Manila and Beijing, that both sides needs to exhaust all possible means before going to international court. Now, the Philippines has already presented the case 2 years ago. It's likely late last year, in November 2015, the Permanent Court of Arbitration announced that they have the rights to review and process 7 out of the 15 cases.
Oh, really?
That was a shock for China because the People's Republic of China thought that the court will reject everything, but the court ruled that they have the rights to review 7 out of 15. One of them that hit us hard. That is the Taiping Island. That today we want to talk about.
Yes, and in your opinion, Alex, do you think the Taiping Island should be considered as an island, not a rock, or what is your take on that?
The baseline is that based on or according to the definition of the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, that a country can claim waters on the basis of the land you have. So the spirit of 1982 Law of the Sea is that how the range or the size of the water that you can claim is based on whether you have a land in the water, and the land has to meet all the definition and requirements. For instance, that it has to be serviced during high tide. It has to be naturally habited. And that people can live on it. So the land feature definition is a key to determine whether you can claim the waters. And the Philippine case, we have 2 issues with the Philippines claim. The first one is that they consider, they use a picture of Zhongzhou Raft next to a very tiny, sand land or reef. Next to the Taiping Island, and say that was the Taiping Island, misled the members of the International Court. The second one is that they claim that we have problems to supply fresh water on the Taiping Islands, so we could not claim the Taiping as an island. Because if you do not have an island, then you cannot announce your territorial sea plus the contiguous area plus the EEZ, the Economic Exclusive Zone. So you have to be a clearly defined island size of land feature to have EEZ. And that's the source of conflict.
Okay. And what do you think after the decision by the International Court? Will there be any settlement possible on at least some of the issues or points raised by the Philippines? Or is it going to be continuous arguing back and forth between the competing parties?
I don't know whether I can make a complicated issue simple.
Okay.
But let me highlight some of them. Number
Please.
one, whether because it's not a real international court, it's called permanent court of arbitration. So their decision is not a ruling, and it will called a word.
Okay.
But whether a word is binding or non-binding is a subject of debate itself.
Yes.
Number one. And number two, Taiwan, we were not in the process. We were not the target by the government of the Philippines. So when there is a decision, should we be abide by that decision? What kind of international pressure will be on us? Number three, would there be more lawsuit between the PRC and the Philippines? It might.
Okay.
But unfortunately, all the archives that define the land feature, the measurement, and the survey data, and the original map that been made in 1947 is in Taipei.
Good.
So if Beijing wanted to file a lawsuit, they have to borrow documents and archives from Taipei. And then we will be put in the hot seat, whether to help, the Philippines or Beijing, or the United States will say you'd help this one and that one. And that pressure will come in months because the decision by the permanent court will be out in probably 2-3 months.
Okay, so it should be sometime in the immediate horizon that we'll know the results. And thank you, Alex, for giving us that very comprehensive background surrounding the controversy in South China Sea. And we need to take the first break on our program today. We'll be right back. Alex, thank you for giving us that very comprehensive background surrounding the South China Sea controversy. Let me ask you this. What is then the value and the strategic importance of Taiping Island? Why are all the competing countries in the region, the ROC, the PRC, Malaysia, Vietnam, and others, that are competing in the controversy for their own benefits? Why? Why is it so important about the island?
Taiping Island has been the largest natural-made island in the center of the South China Sea. So the location makes it very important. Number two, the South China Sea is the medium that 1/3 of the global maritime trade will pass through. It also is a medium way between the imported oil of Japan and the Republic of Korea and the entire Northeast Asia, including China, that all need to have a very pacified, calm passage using that maritime common we call South China Sea. It become valuable because that there were reports, surveys suggested that there is at least an oil reserve under the seabed with the volume of Kuwait. That's huge.
That's attractive.
China is developing. Japan, Taiwan do not produce our own gas. So we need to find energy. So this is also, the second is the competition of energy. The third is the competition of precious minerals and what we call rare earth. Those under the seabed. That's the number three. And of course, number four is something that people don't want to talk about it. It's the strategic location. Taiping Island, as I suggested, is located at the center of the South China Sea. Recently, we have some other conversation concerning the tensions in the Korean Peninsula.
Yes.
That the United States want to introduce a kind of missile defense system called THAAD.
Well, okay, all right.
Let me give you or the audience a kind of visual thing that if we put a South China Sea map in our head and put Taiping Islands in the middle, and if we installed a THAAD system on the Taiping, the X-band radar can touch the eastern shore of Vietnam and western shore of the Philippines, which means if you have Taiping Islands, you have a control of the entire South China Sea, and its natural island is not artificial one.
No.
It has been standing there for thousands of years, and that's why everybody wants to get a hold on this island.
Okay, and let me ask you then, because of its value, maybe, that's why, President Ma Ying-jeou decided to make a visit on January 28th, 2016. And the trip itself, of course, is not without controversies. But let me ask you first, in your personal opinion, what do you think were the factors or the reasons that the president decided to make the visit just months before his term in office ends?
Well, I can give you a 3-hour
lecture on this.
Analysis on how important the president's attitude and position.
Yes.
The real key for President Ma's visit is, of course, closely linked with the lawsuit raised by the Filipino government.
Okay.
And everybody knows that the ruling will come out pretty soon. Taiwan has been under pressure from both ends, Beijing and Washington, D.C. Washington considered that the entire South China Sea is a part of the global maritime common, so it's open seas.
Yes.
And in fact, the United States has been a predominant force in Western Pacific and provided a safety passage of all kinds of shippings for all countries.
Okay.
Ever since the end of World War II. So the United States does not want, sovereignty claims to disrupt two things. Number one, the safe passage or freedom of navigation.
Yes.
And number two, to challenge the predominance of the American presence. With these two reasons, the United States hoped that Taiwan will say less and act less and do not complicate this issue. However, from the position of the president, he definitely needs to show his strong, desire and commitment to defend the so-called sovereign territory, including the Taiping. That's reason number one. And reason number two is that we need to manage the cross-strait relations.
Yes.
China's position, or the pressure from Beijing on us, is that you need to jointly, together, Beijing plus Taipei, mainland plus Taiwan, together to protect the lands and waters and islands that we both inherited from our ancestors.
Yes.
Okay. So if you want to sell a real estate that left by your ancestors, all the brothers needs to sign.
Yeah, agree to
and that's the logic in Beijing's mind. So Beijing wants Taiwan to do more, and Washington wants Taiwan to do less. And we were just standing in the middle, and that's our pressure.
Yeah, I would imagine then under the circumstances, President Ma Ying-jeou's visit in January was not welcome by Washington.
Not at all.
Yes. What was their reaction from Washington? And also, how did Beijing respond to the visit by, President Ma may be a little more favorable than Washington's. But to what, extent is Beijing welcoming gestures like this by our president?
Washington's position on this Taiwan's efforts or activities around Taiping has been constant. The term they use, like unhelpful, yes. Making a statement at the wrong time, or doing something unnecessary. That's the line of the expression, and we understand why the United States is concerned. However, I think Beijing we made it very clear, and before President's trip, we understood that Beijing will react favorably because it fits in that their position that we defend the land together.
Yes.
However, we have made it very clear, even to Beijing. We originally committed to the United States, but we also made it very clear to Beijing that we do not talk about South China Sea with Beijing. We do not talk to you. No. We do everything on our own. You can say that's a commitment to the United States, but that's also a very strong position that expressed to Beijing.
Of course. And given the fact that the president made the trip and Beijing and also Washington responded, why do you think that Beijing and Washington continue to be at odds over the whole controversy in South China Sea? Because you see Beijing is being very visible, very active in the region, even through actions of landfill, building up airstrips, building up bases, even getting more habitation on the places wherever they are. And what do you think is likely lead in between the two superpowers, or one superpower or one about to be superpower in this South China Sea controversy?
Yeah, I think the South China Sea is a contested ground,
yes,
or waters between a rising power and a existing power. Yes. So the competition is there. It's so natural. You cannot deny it. And number two, I think China's military modernization and the growing economic power had made or increased the anxieties of surrounding countries in the neighborhood that consider that China may have a more military force projection capability farther away from its coastline. And of course, that will challenge the what we call the predominance of the United States in the region. But China also, their actions are backed by their economic might, and raise the anxiety, number one. And number two, South China Sea, as we say, is a passage, a pathway between Northeast Asia and the Middle East. It's very, very important location. So I think there will be competition. Why China is doing this land reclamation or making artificial islands? I think it's buying insurance.
Oh, okay.
China supported Taiwan's claim, and calling the U-shape 11-dash line. They used the term 9-dash line.
Okay.
This entire South China Sea, we call that the historical waters, or waters with historical rights that China has, or Taiwan, the Republic of China, has the historical right over the water.
All right.
And now, whether that could be accepted by international community, that's another story.
But we will find out in the coming months. Yes. We need to take another break on our program today. We'll be back in just a few minutes. And Alex, thank you for giving us that very overall thorough analysis of the position and the interest of different parties, especially China. Now we're going to shift the focus a little bit onto the United States. You also mentioned about the U.S. concerns about being, keeping the area, as indication of freedom of navigation and other, national interests of the United States. But given the fact that U.S. is now, directly or indirectly involved in the controversy, what do you think is the U.S. view towards the different gestures, including the visit by President Ma Ying-jeou and the subsequent development in the region? And how will U.S. react if the controversy doesn't get any better after the decision by the arbitration court has been handed down? What do you think?
I think for the United States, the interest is clear.
Okay.
That number one, they see the South China Sea or even the Western Pacific as a maritime common, which means everyone can use it. It does not belong to anyone. And it was not a problem, as we said. In China, the People's Republic of China did not have a foothold in the South China Sea before 1988. They took some islands from the hands of Vietnam. Okay. That's when they started. Okay. And after that, we see, kind of 7 to 10 years interval that when the tension raised. Right now, I think the United States, another interest for the United States is that it worries that certain countries, especially the People's Republic of China, will announce the baseline and territorial water and EEZ, and that kind of intimidate other countries to follow suit, and then make the maritime common become a contested sovereign waters. Yes. And that's not in the interest of the United States. So that's why the United States wanted that all parties to be very, prudent and restrained from doing things. However, the other side of the United States is that the United States is no longer a dominating single superpower in the 21st century. The rise of China, the Asia-Pacific economic performance made the United States less influential than that of 20 years ago.
Of course.
And that anxiety from the part of either Washington or, Hawaii will, put the United States position even more rigid, that trying to use everything possible, every power possible to ask countries not to do something. However, even Taiwan, as small and weak as Taiwan, that the United States found itself difficult to push, their policy through and being accepted by Taiwan government. Okay. And that's their pressure.
All right. We also understand that our government in Taiping Island is doing currently some development projects. Can you tell us what are some of the things that are taking place on the island? And once the development projects are complete, how would that strengthen our claim, sovereignty claim over the Taiping Island?
I think, number one, the sovereignty for us is relatively easy because we have been there for over 60 years. Earlier, the Marine, and now the Coast Guardsmen. And number two is that we are doing everything that you can think of on the soft side.
All right.
We have been having college students summer camp over the Taiping. 2 or 3 programs every summer that professors of oceanic science or international relations will accompany a group of students and tour the Taiping Island. And so we want to educate, maritime education, that's number one. Number two, we do oceanic scientific surveys. So Taiping Island have been serving as a station for the ocean survey that our surveillance ships can dock and rest and continue to use that as a medium position. Number three, we are doing weather stations. We have a small hospitals, probably the only one in the entire South China Sea. And we have a newly built lighthouse that we can provide safe navigation of the ships for any country surrounding that water. So we are doing everything possible to provide a future humanitarian support, and probably we can also use our airstrip to provide safe passage and the navigation and the overflight of other countries' airplanes.
Okay. And one thing that happened during the last presidential election was one of the candidates even proposed that we could develop Taiping Island into a tourist destination. Whether that's a plausible, a proposal that remains to be discussed, analyzed by government officials, by private industry people. But the fact of the matter remains is Taiping Island, under the current circumstances, and with the continuation of these development projects, will ever eventually become an island or a destination where the ROC not only exercises the sovereignty claim over it, but actually the mentality would change in the sense that this is part of our territory. In addition to Taiwan, Pescadero, Kinmen, and Matsu, we also have Taiping. Do you think that's something that's already taking place or beginning to take place, or is it something that really, to the very, non-productive ends?
Well, I think it's pretty natural. Okay. If we are, utilizing these islands for education purpose, scientific research, weather reporting, and navigation assistance, and even medical service. Yeah. And so everyone involved from different professions. Okay. I think we are expanding already the consciousness of our own citizens, especially the younger generation, on the concept of maritime territory and the maritime rights much larger than the main islands of Taiwan. And I think it's a growing importance and being accepted by the younger generation.
Good. And also the fact is that, Alex, we talk about Taiping Island and we talk about the implication politically, strategically, and if we continue to exercise our claims, to do the activities that you have specified, do you think that's an indication of our strength and commitment to continue to claim Taiping Island is part of us?
Well, for Taiwan, for the Republic of China, let's be realistic.
Yes.
We have two issues down south. One is the U-shaped line. Yeah. How do we keep, no matter in the legal way or a practical way, the claim? The other is the Taiping. So for the Taiping Islands, without doubt, I believe that no matter which party takes the power, we'll keep on the efforts that we are doing now.
Okay, and some of the your colleagues in the scholarly community also claim that Taiwan doesn't have either the strength or the determination, to enhance its, presence, to enhance its claims over the, Taiping Island. What do you think? Do you agree?
Well, I do not want to dispute my fellow colleagues. Okay. And I do not want to be seen as hyper-nationalistic.
Okay.
I think being pragmatic is that we have to recognize that we have been on the Taiping Islands for a long, long time, through generations, and there is no way for us to give it up. And it's very hard to give it up.
Of course.
Yeah, if we are leaving, who should the island that we can turn to? To Beijing, the United States won't be happy. To Vietnam or the Philippines, our own people would say no.
No.
So we were trapped now. We have to have it. We also need to admit that to keep that islands will require national resources. We burn gas, we send ships. It's not cheap to keep that island. So I think we need to think hard.
Yeah, well, this is something for the new government, new administration to consider. All right, we need to take the final break on the program today. We'll be right back. Alex, we've been talking about the positions of the U.S., of China, and things. But, we also understand that our government is doing many things on the Taiping Island, as you just specified. And also there's been some reports that one of the purposes for President Ma's visit to Taiping Island at late January was to make the announcement of the South China Sea Peace Initiative, public. So let, all the neighboring countries and as well as the global community know that Taiwan, as the sovereignty claims over the Taiping Island, but also at the same time is doing its part, trying to make sure that the peace and stability in the region is maintained. What do you think, the peace initiative, tell us first what it is. And do you think the initiative will somehow resonate with all the parties that are involved in the controversy?
Yeah, of course. Politicians or diplomats love to talk about values like peace, stability, well-beings. But I think I give a special applause to President Ma Ying-jeou for his South China Sea Peace Initiative because of a specific, environment and situation in that area. I think people would be very suspicious if a strong power or superpower raised an initiative.
Yes.
So from raised by a smaller state is good. Number two is that we were there. We have been the government that taking over these islands and waters since the end of World War II. But so the original owner is talking about peace and offers some ways to maintain peace. I think it has its own merits that people should listen to. More importantly is that President Ma Ying-jeou, in his short trip to the Taiping, he also offered a roadmap. And roadmap that no one had been raised. It's so pragmatic and so real that actually can be doable. For instance, he wanted, other countries were only talking about shelving the dispute or disagreement. But President Ma Ying-jeou walk or sail another extra mile by saying that let's sit down and identify the blocks that without dispute and do joint project there first. And using those building blocks to raise the collaborative confidence with each other. And I think that's a pretty good idea. I would strongly urge that our friends in the neighborhood and the regional powers to read carefully about this roadmap. It's actually doable initiative.
This is probably the second in recent memories that our government, the ROC, has taken the initiative on regional and peace issues. The first, of course, being the East China Sea Peace Initiative that President proposed a few years ago. That particular proposal on East China Sea controversy. However, it's not completely similar to the South China Sea controversy because of all the dimensions that you mentioned, also because of the party to the disputed territories are different. And given the fact that the East China Sea Peace Initiative received quite tremendous amount of welcoming feedback from neighboring countries, even from the United States, do you anticipate that maybe after a few months, after people have the time to really review and digest what President Ma Ying-jeou has stated in the initiative on South China Sea controversy, do you think it's likely that we're going to receive the same kind of positive feedback and people are willing to explore the initiative even further?
I think you are right, Raymond, that the situation and the claimants and the players in the East China Sea is totally different from the South China Sea. And that's why I also recommended my own government that taking different approaches toward, peace initiative in East China Sea and South China Sea. I think we have been more cautious and more prudent toward the East. Why? Because it directly involved the U.S.-Japan alliance. And the United States has been our friend or ally for decades. So we do not want to have a direct dispute with our own friends. And also the United States and Japan is relatively stronger. If we compare these two powers to the Philippines and Vietnam, so Taiwan, of course, would take a different approach. My recommendations are two P's. Prudent to the east, proactive to the south. Because different parties. And Alex, you also know, following the presidential election, we're going to have a new president and a new administration in office very soon. And given the fact that, President-elect Tsai Ing-wen has repeatedly stated that, Taiping Island is part of the sovereign territory of the ROC, but also at the same time, she would like to, with her administration, keep and maintain the peace and stability in South China Sea region. And what would then do you expect that the new team and the new president will do and should do on this controversy in South China Sea? I think so far, from the beginning of her campaign until today, and possibly for the immediate future, I think she will maintain the two statements. Number one, we keep the Taiping. Number two, we abide by everything else. We will abide by the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, and that's safe. You play safe when you begin. However, there are two challenges. Number one is the decision or the outcome of the Permanent Court of Arbitration when the result is issued. Do you consider that binding? Does the new government consider that as part of the international law, or at least a powerful interpretation of that law, whether we are confined by the decision? That's number one. And number two, do not forget, anything that we do in the South China Sea will immediately affect cross-strait relations. If Taiwan back away from the current position or the overlapping sovereignty claim in the South China Sea has been diverted to other definition, then that will kill the Beijing-Taipei relationship. And the new government needs to keep that in mind at all times.
All right. Alex, I'm going to ask you something that's probably unfair. Do you, foresee any possibility that the controversy in South China Sea can come to a peaceful resolution?
I think it could be.
It could be.
It could be.
Okay.
Because there will be, I envision a larger probability of collaboration.
Okay.
Compares to a lesser willingness to pick, fight or conflict. Why? Because there are so many humanitarian assistance requirements in that region, and everybody's benefactor for a peaceful South China Sea.
Okay.
Because the shipping, the trade is for everybody's good.
Okay.
As the only problem probably would be Captain Jack Sparrow.
Okay.
Should he decide that even with maritime piracy,
yes,
it is still require a joint efforts by all parties to work together to fight this kind of universal crime. Okay. So I think I'm more positive on this.
Good. And we have only about 1 minute left in the program today. Alex, I'm going to ask you something personal. You and I have been friends for many, many years. And I've seen you in the position of being a researcher, administrator, and scholar, and also government officials. Let me ask you, which role do you like the best and why?
I like them all.
Oh, I'm sure that was going to be your answer. No. I mean,
my only shortcoming, personal shortcoming, is that I do not want to be in one position too long.
Oh, okay.
When I am looking at another, yes, I love it.
Okay, but the different positions that you held certainly giving you the opportunity to accumulate your expertise and knowledge about the issues that you are concerned with, and also the people in Taiwan are concerned with. And certainly we see the contribution that you have made in that aspect. And certainly want to wish you all the best in the future professional and personal endeavors. Thank you very much.
It's my honor on the program.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Yes, I want to thank you for watching our program today. I'll see you next time on MacroView Television. Thank you.